call the Lake Ripley Management District Board of Directors meeting to order. It's December 7th, 2024. It's 9 o'clock. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Roll call. All members are present except for Steve. He's excused. He's out of town. Is there any public comment today? Any public comment, guys? Nothing? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to approval of the minutes of the October 21st board meeting. Take a few moments to review, and then I'll entertain a motion to approve. I was not at this meeting. So.
I know, I just saw that. I was like, wait a second.
I make a motion to approve the minutes
Okay.
of the October meeting.
Yep. Megan's made a motion to approve the October 19th minutes. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Debbie seconded. Any other discussion on the minutes?
I'm going to abstain since I wasn't here that
Yeah,
day.
okay. That's fine. Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? And Laura has abstained. Okay. We will move on to Treasurer's Report, Debbie Coots.
Okay, so for the first thing, we have the October report ending 10/31/24. Disbursements were $17,322.15. Petty cash was $50. Checking account was $159,616.27. And the CDs amounts include the interest that was recorded in the September statement. So this will be going up when we get at the end of the year, because they give us quarterly statements for interest. The only thing that was out of character for the Visa bill was the newspaper notices for the annual meeting was $757.10. Well, that's what we owed them. That might have also been for another meeting, but it was higher because of the annual meeting notice. I don't know if there's any questions about anything that was, any checks that were written. I had told you at the last meeting that I had written the check to Shore Place Homeowners Association, and you can see that there. Which, helps bring the total up quite a bit when it's $4,800. You probably want to approve them separately, probably?
Yeah, we'll approve.
Okay.
Is that all you had?
That's all there is for
Okay.
October.
Any other questions for Debbie's October report? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the report as presented. Georgia, you made the motion? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Laura seconded. Is there any other discussion on the October report? Okay, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays? Okay, motion passes. Thank you, Deb.
Okay, so now for the 1 month ending 11/29/24. I had to add back in the check that was written to Andrew Sabai, number 5119, that was written to him as a payroll check on 9/13/24, because it was never cashed and apparently it was lost. So that's where your 2483 is coming in to make it come out, because then you'll see that I wrote him a new check for that amount plus another hour of pay that he had put in and that we hadn't paid him for.
Okay.
Disbursements for the period are $9,615.90. And the petty cash is $50. The checking account was $145,105.63. And the CDs aren't showing any additional amount because of, we haven't found out yet. The one thing to note in here is that we had gotten a bill that we had to return some of the taxes that we had been given to the town of Oakland for a property. And so that's what this town of Oakland chargeback of taxes, $271.77, is about.
Yeah, and that was an overcharge by our assessor, and that was refunded back to the property owner, and then, of course, that has to be refunded all the way back to us.
So, in case you're wondering what that was about. The Visa bill had nothing that was, wasn't monthly charges, so, or that was out of. So, I don't know if there's any questions.
Any other questions for Debbie on the November treasurer's report? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the November treasurer's report as presented.
I will do that.
Georgia has made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Doug seconded. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? All right, motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Debbie.
And then just, like informational is, this morning I worked on the expense worksheet. There's still going to be, like, I got bills today that some of that will be added in, but it kind of gives you an idea. Like some of these accounts, there won't be any more charges to, and as you look through it, a lot of it's like pretty close to the budgeted amount. I think we did pretty good. The one thing that was really low was the preserve restoration, and I did get one more bill for that. And Leanna's going to look to make sure that we've done everything that we were going to do, we budgeted for this year.
Yeah, we're right on schedule, huh? You don't see any areas that we need to?
Well, we talked about it a little bit the last time. I mean, we just got another $200 bill for the lawyer. So we probably didn't budget it enough for next year, unless hopefully, you just don't know what's going to come up.
Right. And it's a guess. Every year we just guess. That's one of those things where if more things come up during the year, your legal costs are just going to be there, and you just have no way of getting any closer on those things. We have a very competent legal staff. They're reasonable in price, so that's just one of those things that you have to monitor.
And I will mention that I had seen in the minutes about the workman's comp. I have not followed up with that person that we've been dealing with, and I pulled the file so that I'll make sure I do that on Monday, because we have not received a refund, which she told us we would, which, they tell you that a lot and it doesn't ever come through. But I will follow up with her this week on it just to see what's happening with that. That's up here in 503. Since we got it straightened out about the coding for our employees, she said that they would recode it and we would be given a refund, and so far I haven't seen anything. I did see that we got the new codings, but we haven't
got
seen
the
a
money.
check.
Okay.
And what else was there? We haven't paid for the storage yet for the harvester, which is, we'll be doing before the end of the month, which is, a higher amount.
How much is that this year?
It was
27?
$23.50 or something like that, but I don't know. And we haven't paid for the pontoon storage, have we? Did I give you a check for that? I can't remember.
I don't think you did. I think I have to run that out there yet, so we'll have to do that too.
Yep. So that's why, that doesn't show anything for storage.
Okay.
Because none of that's been paid yet.
Okay.
I don't know if there's any other questions.
Anybody have any questions on the spreadsheet? Thanks for putting that together again.
Yeah,
This
thanks,
is a
Debbie.
nice tracking mechanism and lets everybody see kind of where we're at throughout the year.
Well, I mean, like, we budgeted 199, so these are only budgeted items. But, like, if you go to the cost share, we spent 4,800, even though we still have a couple of projects that haven't been completed. And we budgeted like 15,000, so there's a big share of, the money, the difference.
Yep. Okay.
All right?
Yeah, nice
It's
job.
just for your information.
Yep.
It's nothing that needs, I'm just trying to keep you up to date because we won't have anything else before the end of the year, and best
No.
we can do.
Yeah, nice job. I appreciate that, and so does the board, I'm sure. Any other questions for Debbie on her report? Anything else you want to add?
Nope,
Okay.
that's enough.
Thank you. That is okay. Thank you, Debbie. We'll move on to the reports. Town of Oakland Representative Laura Payne. What you got for us at the town? I know
well,
it's been super busy, Laura.
It
I
has
know
been
you've been
super-
swamped. And
Well,
thank you
I have
for
a,
everything.
Welcome
I have
to
a
the
few-
board.
Thank you for
Thanks for being
having me.
here.
I'm really happy to be on the board. I've lived here for about 25 years, and we have a community pier, so the lake has always been very important to me and my family. So I'm really happy to be the chair of the town and as well as being on this board. I just have a few items. We've wrapped up, for the most part, Park Road. Just very recently, they finished the last of the stormwater management that was added just north of Ripley Road on the west side. There's some seeding that was done there, but it's frozen, so I don't think there's much that the vegetation won't be established at this point. In the spring, hopefully the subcontractors will come out, reseed where the vegetation hasn't been established, and get that established early in the spring. If not, the town will take care of that. We're committed to doing that. But for right now, it's going to stay as it is. In our annual budget this year for 2025, we have allocated funds for engineering services to work on the boat launch. It's our understanding from Jimmy that as you go down, you might be able to explain it better, they're hitting the bottom.
Yeah, well, so as you back down the current ramp, there's that cement pad that goes out, 20 feet or something? And then after that 20 foot, there's literally a drop off before you hit the bottom again, and your trailer gets stuck in that spot. And I had brought it up to the town that we should budget some money and to start taking a look at that so we can plan to fix that. Pontoon trailers, our weed harvester trailer, any trailer that's any larger than like a 12-foot boat will drop into that thing, and it's really hard to get it out. So I think we budgeted, what, 10 or 15,000?
15, I believe.
Yeah.
So we will do the engineering this year and then the construction in 2026. We'll just have to, we couldn't really budget at this time for the cost since we really weren't sure of that. But once we have the engineering, we'll be able to do that for 2026. The next is the Didion subdivision. They had their preliminary plat approved a couple years ago or so, I believe, a year ago. They have come back to the town board with some revisions to their preliminary plat. I have this here. They are removing the multifamily. They had done a market study and believe that wasn't fiscally feasible for them to do. It approved through the Planning Commission this week. It'll go to the full board on the 17th, and then it'll go to the county for just a preliminary. Part of the approval process will be for an engineer to review all of the drawings with stormwater management, setbacks to the wetland that's there, everything else to ensure that everything is correct. That's just standard practice. I know that Leanna has talked to, and Jimmy, about acquiring the wetlands here, so that'll be something that'll have to come up. And if that is accepted and you have an easement, all of that will be in the developer's agreement, and as well, it'll be on the final plat, so everything is all together, and that'll make things much easier to do. So they plan on going through the approval process into 2025 and perhaps constructing in 2026, but we will be monitoring that closely as we move forward. Was there any questions on that one?
No, I mean, we've been spending time, like you said, lately with John, myself, Leanna, and others have met with John and their staff to try to understand what they're thinking and how this is going to move forward. So we have been very involved with this subdivision. As you all know, we've had it on our agenda for years and years, trying to get updates, and we're finally getting closer. So we are having a lot of input with the town and with the Lake District to make sure that everything
Leanna and I have talked about this. We reviewed it together. We want this to be a collaborative process. Make sure that that everything is built properly to protect the wetlands there. And I believe, based on conversations with them and their new engineer, that they are very mindful of this and will be designing this properly. So I don't have any concerns about it, but we'll still be monitoring it, and I'll keep you posted, and I'll be talking to Leanna about that. And then, I lost my little sticky. The last item is Enbridge. I know that Leanna will be talking about that later,
Yeah.
but just from a town's perspective, I had heard that there was a minor spill at the Enbridge pump station on 18, just west of the Speedway, and I had called the county about that. I was a little disappointed. I really didn't get any information about that from them. They said that there should be a final report in the next meeting, but that's not for February. But I've spoken with Leanna. She has called Enbridge, so we will be monitoring that as well for the safety of the lake, because potentially there's a stream there that could go that goes towards the lake and into it, as well as from a safety perspective of our residents. So we'll keep on monitoring that. So far, there's not a lot of details. There has been a subsurface investigation. We'll see what happens then. I will review that as well if need be. I'll talk to the DNR. I am an environmental engineer. I've done a lot of this type of work, so I'll be able to look at it myself. But of course, Leanna and I will be talking about it.
So how did you find out about it?
Somebody called me, and who was at that meeting, and had said they
So
brought.
Enbridge did report it?
Enbridge did report it,
Okay.
yes, and I.
They've had a history of not, so that's why I'm
Their
asking.
initial report was only 2 gallons, though.
Right, their initial report was only 2 gallons. I believe it's more. At this point, I personally can't say what it is. I don't believe anybody can. But yes, it was small, but as they have excavated to remove contaminated soils, it appears that it's much greater than that. It seems to be contained, but I think Leanna could speak more about this, and she spoke directly with Enbridge. But when it was brought up at the Emergency Management Committee meeting at the county, somebody was there and contacted me, just a citizen. So I appreciated that. But I did call the county immediately, and I just didn't get much of a response or any information from them. And luckily we have Leanna, who was able to contact Enbridge. And I believe that they've been pretty upfront with her and very collaborative with this. So we'll just keep monitoring what is happening. We'll get that final report, and hopefully all of the contaminated soil has been removed, and we won't have to worry about it. But we'll keep you posted on that.
Yep. No, thank you for that. And as soon as Laura heard about it, she had asked me, and I hadn't heard about it, so then I had reached out to Leanna, and so we started looking into it. So, yeah, and we'll keep monitoring it. So,
Yes, absolutely.
and our inlet stream is roughly 100 yards from the site or so. So
About that.
we're very good. So anyway, I'll let you talk about that in your report. Okay, anything else, Laura?
No, I'm good, unless
All
you
right.
had any questions for me.
Any other questions for Laura? Okay, seeing
Okay.
none. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Yep. Jefferson County Representative, Meg, what you got for us?
Well, as I mentioned last time, the groundwater report was completed. It is now available up on the website for the county. It looks kind of like this. It was slightly changed from this hard copy that I have. A couple minor things, like they corrected the dashboard link. But there is a link in there that you can go onto a dashboard. You can kind of drill down into some of these maps and see where contamination or any of the other kinds of information that was found. It will not take you down to the exact well, because that's kind of proprietary information, it's privacy issue, et cetera, but it'll get you into the area. And so there's little maps here that are showing just kind of how much, chloride, how much, nitrate issues. And then they talk about some recommendations in here for things, also if your nitrate levels are high, what you can do, et cetera. So that is available now on the website. Kind of tangentially related to this is some of the concerns about just land use and activities in the area, and there's a lot of things where people are talking about what the new legislature will do and lobbying for the next biennium and all this other kind of stuff. So I just have a couple of little things I was going to share with you what people are talking about. Let's see here. There is a focus right now. The county is focusing on a couple of things, but of those that are relevant here, they are looking at potentially putting in a solar ordinance for small-scale solar. I don't have a lot of details on it. It's still really in the very draft phase. But where that gets kind of interesting is there are some conflicts in state law for siting of wind farms and solar. So the Wisconsin Code administrators also want to see changes in the law that make them very similar. Right now, you can put all kinds of local restrictions on a wind farm, but you can't on a solar farm. So they want to really try to bring these things in line with each other so that there's more local control in how these things are done. A little bit more in some of these joint development agreements. There's quite a few solar projects that have been coming into the county. So the county is looking at trying to have some kind of an ordinance that would allow for some joint development agreements that allow them to set some parameters for how those things come in. Farmland preservation comes into this because a lot of farmers look at this as an opportunity. There's some kind of nebulous language in the law about what is allowed on farmland when it's considered to be utility, and whether or not utility means utility scale, like a solar farm, versus running a utility line across the property. And so they want some clarification on that, because in one read of the farmland preservation, you couldn't be doing any of those kinds of activities on farmland, and especially Ag 1 and other reads you could. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on right now. Another one that's kind of related to what I was talking about with the groundwater is looking at some septic issues. So when they put in new regulations in, I don't have the number in front of me, but it was something like 2003 or something like that. They came out with a new code, and it made it a lot, you no longer had to have a perk test. You would do an actual soil test to get a septic system put in. And there's been quite a few new kinds of systems that have come in that have not proven to be, to have the longevity that they thought they would have. And so they are starting to see problems with breakdowns in these systems. While the county does do a regular septic system check, they want to ask at the statewide level. The county isn't asking this, county administrator organization is, for funding to do research and inspections into these systems, because they are finding that they're not holding up over time the way they're supposed to be doing. And then the only other thing in here that was kind of coming up was that there was there's still going to be some discussion about trying to get some sort of a statewide wake boat regulation in place and some DNR enforcement into that. It's very limited. The county has absolutely no ability to do anything unless they can argue for hazardous boating activities, swamping somebody, potentially causing property damage. That's where the county can come in. But otherwise, on a regular basis, that really falls to smaller units of government that have to be responsible for those kinds of activities. Such as the ordinance that the town has. So that's about it. I think one of the other things that I brought up before was that they're also going to be pushing hard to try to get more funding for people who are doing work at the county level in conservation activities. One of the things Land and Water argues is that for every dollar that they put into that, they get twice as much money back in federal funding. I don't know if that's going to hold up in future, but for now, these are kind of some of the goals that they're looking at. So if there's any questions.
Okay. Thank you for all that.
Yeah, way too much stuff.
Any questions for Meg?
Not a question of follow-up. Thanks for sending the groundwater report. I'm going to post that on the district's website too, just in case you guys can't find it on the county website. I'll post it there because that has some really interesting information in it.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Okay. Anything else for Meg? Thank you. Okay. We will move on to Lake Manager's report. Leanna Spencer.
All right. We welcomed Laura to the board, so thank you for being here. We're glad that you're able to fill this position, and we've been working together over the past couple of months, so this felt really natural to have you on the board, so thanks for being here.
Well, thank you.
We're looking forward to it. With that being said, I updated our website to make sure that all of Laura's information was on there, since we didn't have a Town of Oakland representative prior to that. Lots of other website updates, Facebook updates, sent out agendas, had land acquisition committee meetings, so did all the necessary things for those meetings. Cost share, Shore Place is officially complete, so that's good. We have an easement on that project now for the next 10 years. We'll regularly check that every other year to make sure things are going appropriately. Willerup's cost share is still in process. The contractor and landowner are working with the DNR and the district to fix some non-compliance issues. Their riprap just went a little too far up the shoreline, and they didn't have a DNR permit for it. So they're going to be fixing that, and they have a plan that the water management specialist at the DNR is working on approving, and we'll hopefully get some remediation. I would like to say by the end of the year, but I bet it'll be a little after that. Sleepy Hollow, I mentioned this last time, their cost share project to put riprap in is going well. They've already installed their rain garden. We realized that they would need a DNR permit, as that's in a critical habitat designation area. So the landowner is actually working on getting a permit, and hopefully that riprap can be installed before there's ice on the lake this year. Or actually, it'd be better if there was ice on the lake. That would be a little easier too. So that's going well. Under grants, I'm going to be closing out the Phragmites grant, which was at the property on Island Lane. We've been working on that for about 3 years. The Phragmites stand has reduced dramatically, and there's some really beautiful native plants that are thriving in that area. The landowners will probably have to do a little bit of management by themselves by removing seed heads and collecting seeds and broadcasting them in their place would be a good idea. And we'll do some follow-up. ERC is the company we've been working with for the last 3-4 years. ERC and the district will follow up with the landowners just with like a final report. Here's what's happened, and be there as a resource if needed. But the district does not intend on applying for another grant to help manage that particular stand, just because we've seen good success, and now that could be a landowner responsibility. I'll also be closing out the Clean Boats, Clean Waters grant, so that's pretty easy and straightforward. I did apply for the 3 surface water grants that we had discussed in our previous meeting, so those have been sent in successfully. We'll hear back about those in February sometime. Hoping to get all 3. One for sure is an easy grab, that's Clean Boats, Clean Waters, but the other 2 I feel pretty good about. All of the biologists and DNR folks, they're not just biologists, fisheries and financial specialists that I spoke to all felt that these were strong grants in their areas, so that was helpful. The amendments were officially approved by the DNR. There was no public comment, so you can find the amendments that we approved to our 10-year lake management plan and 10-year preserve management plan on our website. So if anybody needs a copy of those, just feel free to come see me. Inlet Stream Restoration Project, that's moving along. We have a signed contract. We're planning our projects. We're getting a schedule together. Stantec is hoping to complete the banks survey on the inlet stream towards the end of December. I am working on getting permission from the inlet stream landowners. So hopefully within the next couple weeks, I'll hear back from all of those folks, and things will start getting going. We did temporarily remove the piezometers from the project scope. I did mention that we had a meeting to discuss that. I just didn't feel like at the moment it was worthwhile for our money. It would tell us more information, but I didn't feel like it was information that would progress the project any more than the project is already moving. So the Stantec scientists agreed with me. I actually made some other phone calls. Patricia Cicero at the county agreed. Arthur Watkinson at the DNR agreed. So it's nice to have those conversations and get other people's opinions, just because it's typically me in the office, and more opinions is always good. So if you have any more questions about that, feel free to let me know. Come to my office, stop by, we can chat about it. Lake issues. Jimmy did mention that the Town of Oakland boat launch is to be repaired, and I think Laura mentioned it too, in 2026. The design plans are now. I reached out to Aaron Cox at the DNR, who issues these kinds of permits. The town will need a permit, I'm assuming, because they'll want to put something permanent there and not pea gravel. Either way, if you put gravel in there or concrete, you'll need a permit. So I connected them with the proper person who can help lead them towards a good design plan and things like that. So we're working on it.
And
Yeah, please.
I was just going to say, I think Rock Lake is doing a big
I
project.
just saw that. I saw that
Yeah.
on the county board agenda.
Right, so you might want to check in with them because they have the similar problem where power boats are scouring it because, you start to drop in, then you're giving it gas and trying to get your boat up onto the trailer, and it scours everything out at the end of the ramp. And so they just got, they were going in for grants for getting that done, so it might be something to look into.
Absolutely. I'll call Colton. Actually, I have a call out to him, so when he calls me back, I'll ask about that. Thanks, Meg.
All right.
Helpful. No, please. That kind of stuff is helpful. As Jimmy and Laura mentioned, there was a confirmed oil spill at the Enbridge facility. Right now, it's being reported as 126 gallons or 3 barrels. It's difficult to know exactly how much is spilled until all of the remediation has been completed. Enbridge has been very cooperative this entire time. As soon as I heard from it from Jimmy, I called my Enbridge representative. He answered, he confirmed it for me, and he got me up to the next person. John Isley is who I've been working with, and they've all been really cooperative. Jimmy and I went down to the inlet stream. We did see what we thought was an organic, biological, oily sheen, so very natural. When plants decompose, they can produce this oily sheen. We did the stick test, which is very rudimentary, but nonetheless, we did the stick test. It did seem to break up in flakes and did not seem to congeal back together as a chemical would. However, just to be on the safe side, the district decided, let's collect some water samples and send it out for a DRO/GRO test, diesel range organics and gasoline range organics. So that will tell us if this is any chemical substance in the water. Enbridge thought that was a good idea too, so they collected their own separate samples and sent it to a separate laboratory. So we will have 2 different samples from 2 different labs, and the results will be compared. I expect those results back in about 2 weeks' time. When I get those results, I'll be following up with Enbridge. I do know that the DNR had a meeting at the Enbridge site yesterday around 9 o'clock. Trevor Bannister and Maisie, can't remember her last name, pardon me, Maisie, both from the Remediation and Spills Department at the DNR were on site and evaluated it. So told Trevor, I've been speaking with all of these guys pretty constantly over the last 2 weeks. I told Trevor I'd give him a follow-up call this upcoming week to see how that meeting went. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to call me, stop by my office, we can discuss it more.
Yeah.
We're doing all we can to make sure that our inlet stream is protected.
Yeah. There was a leaky valve, we're being told.
Yes, the valve on a gasket failed, is
So
what,
during one of their routine inspections, they discovered the leak, so.
an oily substance, yes. Yeah, thank you.
Leanna, they have 2 lines, correct, that go through there? Do we know what line it was and what was in it?
I am not sure what line it was, but it was crude oil from my understanding.
Okay.
But I'll double check. Do you have something to add?
No, it's more something down the line is just making sure that will they be installing any kind of monitoring equipment?
Good question. They do
Yeah.
have monitoring wells already installed, actually. They installed monitoring wells, I think 7-ish years ago when that Black Hawk Island, when that one happened. So they do have monitoring wells. They have been pulling samples from those, and all the results have come back normal.
Okay.
Yep, yeah, good question. They have been giving me those updates, so. Any other questions on that specific issue?
We're not panicking yet. We think everything's okay. We're on top of it, we're looking at it. And if we find anything different, we'll certainly notify everyone as soon as we know anything, but it seems to be pretty localized and contained at this time. So.
And feel free to call me. I'm here to answer anybody's questions. Unfortunately, I didn't get to go to the Rock River Coalition Confluence. I got COVID for the first time, and that put me down for like 4 days. So unfortunately not, but hopefully in 2 years.
I was there.
I know, I was so bummed. Hopefully in 2 years I'll be able to give the presentation that I created, so we'll see. I did get a question from a resident about bur oak and other diseases and pests, and if there was any regulation, and Georgia actually mentioned that she thinks there is. And when I chatted with Nick Colts, who we met, they told me that there wasn't. So I'm going to follow up on that again. Me and you maybe chat after this meeting, and I'll do a little more follow-up because there are some disease and pests on these oak trees in the town of Oakland, and if you don't control them, then they can spread to your neighbor's oak trees, and it can become, you know, a big issue. So let's chat about that afterwards.
Yep.
Generac unfortunately got rained out, and then it got really cold, and then the seeds all dropped, and the volunteer just didn't work out. So we've committed to doing it earlier next year. It was just, you know, got too late in the year. The weed harvesting program, we're going to be having not a committee meeting, a end of year wrap up season with the harvester soon, just to see how everything went. So I'll report back on that. And then Laura already gave a pretty good update on the Oakland Hills subdivision and what's happening there. If you guys have any questions, let me know. The Land Acquisition Committee has met with the developer and the landowner to discuss a range of possibilities and opportunities for the district. We're considering them. When he has a more defined project proposal for the district, he's going to come present it to himself. But as of right now, it's nothing's concrete, so we didn't feel like there was a need to
Yeah, put it
mention
on the
anymore.
agenda yet.
Yeah.
We just don't have enough information. But the intent is to donate the wetlands in that area to the Lake District, if indeed that's something we're interested in. So that's
Would
the
it be
intent.
donating it or easement?
The what?
Donating it, but also giving us an easement
easement,
through
yeah.
the property so we can get our equipment and vehicles and stuff like that over there.
Again, that's just the intent at this time. We're still waiting for
Nothing,
final.
yeah, nothing has been decided or anything like that.
Okay, any questions for Leanna? Anything? Okay, I think we'll move on to,
Dwight, I'm going to ask you guys to all pick up your microphones and join the audience, and we're going to, or swivel around if you can see, and
we can
we'll have
swivel.
Dwight.
Dwight, it's all you.
Just push the button, so hopefully it goes well from there.
You just have to open it.
Is it an open? I think I opened it.
Yep. I don't think you even got to push it. But if you did, that
No,
would
it was
Can you
yellow.
get behind me?
Oh, yeah.
Or orange, rather.
It's good to stand up for a minute.
Is that okay for everybody? Or would you guys prefer a light on?
No, turn it
It's
on.
better with it off.
Hi. Sorry.
Okay, sure.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming to the meeting.
All right, well, as Leanna said, I am Dwight Osmond, the Lake Ripley Management District Water Quality Technician. I'm here quite a bit in the summertime and sporadically throughout the year. And I'm going to be talking about what we found in 2023, and I'm going to be talking about what we did in 2024. So my big project at the beginning of the summer was to close out our 2023 project work. And these are the, I think my dates are wrong on there. It was actually April 2023 through June 2024. But at the beginning of summer, I worked to complete the water quality report, the modeling report for the water budget, total phosphorus, and total suspended solids, and the eval watershed vulnerability report, which was one of the components of the grant we were closing out. And then all of these activities were geared towards helping Leanna close out our existing grant at the time with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. So I'm going to be going over, for the first part of the presentation, the highlights from the final grant report, some of the things that we found, some of the things that are interesting and that might have some impacts on our future activities and planning. So briefly going to touch on what we found in the macroinvertebrate surveys over the year. We sample macroinvertebrates because they are integrators of water quality. So If you stick a bottle in the water, you get an idea of what's happening, like literally that 10 seconds that you're taking a sample, as opposed to looking at the things that live in the creek. That gives us information relative to the exposure that those organisms have had over the course of their lifetime. So it kind of gives you a snapshot of maybe the worst conditions that they've ever experienced. Then of course we're looking at total phosphorus, which is the main driver of algae growth in the lake. Total suspended solids, which would be important in thinking about what's happening at the lake, at the inlet, where the creek meets the lake, and the sediment accumulation that we've observed there. Talking about the water budget, how much water is moving through the watershed, and how much is entering the lake over the course of the season that we monitor from roughly, well, whenever my spring break is until the end of October. And also looking at the total amounts and changes in phosphorus and suspended solids loading. And kind of exciting because we're starting to accumulate annual data, so we can actually do a comparison for the first time, which allows us to think about the validity of our previous conclusions from 2022 and putting them in the context of 2023. And as I'm going to show you, it's actually worked out very well for us in terms of how the weather cooperated, because 2022 was a very wet year and 2023 was a very dry year. Oops, wrong button. So this is a summary of our macroinvertebrate monitoring from 2021 up until 2023. Just kind of looking at the sites and looking at the score. Really what we're looking at is the score interpretation. So it jumps around a lot, everywhere from poor to fair. And as we know, our water quality could be improved, but wouldn't say that it's bad. So what we're looking at in terms of these scores is more likely a reflection of not only extreme weather events that might wash the macroinvertebrates out of the creek, but probably habitat limitation within those creeks. We have a lot of sand, we have a lot of soft sediment. Those critters over there on the right, we have a dragonfly larvae up on the top and a caddisfly larvae on the bottom. Those are both fairly good indicators of things we might find in the creek. We've also found quite a number of mayflies and damselflies and some other good water quality indicators. So really we wouldn't expect those numbers in the right-hand column to move too far away from where they are now, unless we would have some in-stream habitat improvements. Water quality improvement might improve it a little bit, but really we're facing a limitation in habitat. We don't have any large substrate anywhere on the stream. The outlet there is a little bit, but in the inlet creek, you're looking at lots of sediment, lots of sand. The primary habitat available for these critters is aquatic plants, and maybe there's some gravel mixed in the fast water moving areas of the creek, and then any downed trees that are present in the creek. Moving on to total phosphorus. So again, this is the nutrient that drives algae production in the lake. We do have, I'm confident in the data that we've collected from 2020 and that we can compare it to what we've found in other years. Our goal is to get below that 0.075 milligrams per liter threshold. Not really there yet at any of the sites on the inlet creek, although you can see in 2021 and 2023, relatively low flow years compared to 2022, that we do see a market increase in 2022 relative to the other years when we do have more water moving through the system. And I'll talk about why we see that pattern a little bit later in the presentation. Another thing to note, and hopefully you guys can see this, is we look over here, we generally see a bump up, an increase after the pretty significant increase after the creek moves through the preserve down to Highway A. And then basically Ripley Road and Highway A sites are pretty much the same. Does anyone need clarification on where these sites are located, or is it descriptive enough? Good? Okay. Our goal that we kind of set for ourselves for suspended solids, less than 12 milligrams per liter composite when we average our samples throughout the year. Oh, and I skipped this part. We take monthly samples in the spring, bi-monthly samples in the summer, and then monthly samples in the fall and the winter. We don't go out and sample. So all of the results that I'm talking about don't reflect any winter sampling at all at this point. So suspended solids, really again, kind of bouncing around from year to year, but you can see generally much higher averages for most sites in this wet year. So we see a drop or an increase, or we generally see an increase and then a decrease as we go from 21 to 22 and then again to 23. My personal observation when I'm out there in the creek is that the water is very clear, crystal clear, to be honest, when we've had a dry spell, and then when it rains, clouds up very quickly, and then it takes a couple of weeks for it to clear up again after we have a significant rain event. We did start monitoring nitrogen in 2022 and picked up a little bit more than the previous year in 2023. Meg, I don't know if you can comment on what we found, but I think this is pretty typical for surface waters in Jefferson County.
I don't have those numbers, no.
Okay. So generally nothing of major concern, but we're definitely seeing that there is some sort of nitrogen, something is supplying excess amounts of nitrogen to the creek. We would not expect really to be finding much in the way of nitrates and the surface water unless there was some input probably from, it's a groundwater fed stream, so we're probably getting some infusion of nitrates from the groundwater and possibly some in surface water runoff after it would rain. But nothing really jumps out as an extremely high value. Stream flow. So this is where it gets interesting. So these are the values. If you've ever seen me out sampling, I'm walking around with a metal pole with a little propeller on the end of it. These are the values that I took and the other staff assisted taking over the course of the last 4 years. And as you can see, at Highway 18, we don't actually collect that data there. The stream is too small to use the method that we are. The water's just not deep enough. So we don't really have any flow data for those sites. But we do have flow data for the remaining locations, and you can just look at the average numbers, and this is just me going out there like a dozen times and grabbing a flow sample just on my regular work schedule. I did try to target some events if we had them. In 2021 and 2023, there really wasn't much in the way of events to sample. We did have some really large rain events in 2022 that I'll talk about, and those reflect pushing these numbers up quite a bit. So this is where it kind of gets interesting for me, at least. These graphs are a modeled estimation of how much water is moving through the inlet creek. So what those lines represent are a couple of different things. The first is that we have remote monitoring water depth sensors at each of the locations that I mentioned in the previous slide. And every 15 minutes we collect a data point. So doing some math, this graph represents a ton of data points. So like almost 100 data points a day. So what we do then is we take the data in the previous slide, do some modeling, and figure out what mathematical equation best represents the relationship between water depth and how much water is moving through the system. Then we apply that mathematical equation to the tens of thousands of data points that I didn't actually go out there and measure the water flow with the propeller apparatus that I use to measure stream flow. These graphs, the numbers actually in these graphs are scaled identically. So 2022 is up on the top, 2023 is on the bottom. You can see that 2023, we did not really access a model value of 10 cubic feet per second, which 10 cubic feet per second for our creek is a little more than double the base flow. Typically, we're looking at flows that are between 2 and 4 CFS are typical, with small rainfall events and just that regular groundwater infusion into the creek. 2022 is a little bit of a different story. You see this 10 CFS threshold here, which is an event, but a very small event, we have multiple events that exceed not only 10 CFS, but get up there almost into the 25 cubic feet per second. These events right here, well, actually, these events, you would expect to find water in the wetlands surrounding the creek along Highway A, where water actually has the ability to like go over the banks and interact with the landscape. These events here, you will see standing water for multiple days, if not a week or two after these really big events. And what I observed when I went out after these, because I can't sample during an event this big because it just isn't safe. I can get probably points here and here, but the creek has too much water in it to actually physically go out there at this point. But during these events, you will see the water quality of the creek immensely change. The water goes from clear to chocolate milk very, very quickly. So this right here also, this steep peak, tells us that we're having a lot of surface water getting into the creek relatively quickly. And right now, the way our creek is the water just moves faster. It does overtop the banks at Highway A, and I can tell you the extent of that based on where I found the water. And I've done some just kind of like curious investigations where I've looked for indications of sediment on vegetation around the creek. And on Highway A, when you get a big flooding event, it will literally flood to the base of the hill. Like I've seen evidence that there's water pooling up that far, which is actually great news, and that's what we want to happen at those sites, because when the water moves out of the creek into the landscape, it slows the flow of water in the creek. We get a lot of sediment deposition and the nutrients that go along that with it up into the wetlands, and then those wetlands can act as a filter to keep those materials out of the creek. I'm going to talk more in depth about what we found in this event here when I get into a couple of slides later. So a very complex looking table. You can dig into this as much as you want to. But basically what we're looking at is, oh, I lost the headings on this one, my apologies. What we're looking at is some changes in water volume as we go from site to site. And this column here is the amount of water flowing through the system. This column is I believe is the amount of phosphorus flowing through the system. And this would be the relative change in the amount of sediments flowing through the system. So this is the percent change in values that were modeled for the nutrient and water budgets at Ripley Road. So right where the creek crosses Ripley Road, where there's the culvert down there, I sampled downstream of that culvert. So we saw almost a 50% reduction in water volume over the monitoring season over that time period. Again, this is meaning in 2023, there was almost 50% less water moving through the creek, almost 90% less phosphorus moving through the creek, and 80% of suspended solids moving through the creek. So the takeaway from this slide is that big rain events have a big impact on our creek, in our watershed, and in the lake. And if you see anything blacked out, that just indicates that there is no reason to calculate those values. So then I did dig into the 2022 event analysis as part of the report. Again, we have a lot of numbers flying around here. I will try to point out the most important ones. So what I was looking at is when we look at this event over the course of these almost 2 weeks that occurred, multiple rain events that occurred in September of 2022, we had just over 9 inches of rain in 11 days. It's a lot of water. And that water has to make its way through the system. And if you think about how water moves, because most of the banks along our creek are restricted, for the water to get through the creek, it just simply moves faster. Because there's a volume of water that has to move. If you restrict the area where that water can move, while the physics require it to speed up. So I'm looking at the water volume and what percentage of the total water was contributed by this single 11 or 12-day event. Focusing on Ripley Road because that's where the water enters the lake and our point of greatest interest in knowing exactly, what's moving through that last culvert and then down into the inlet of the lake. In the course of 11 days, out of an 8-month monitoring season, 20% of the water moved through that creek in 11 days. If we look at the amount of suspended solids that entered the lake, about 80% of the suspended solids that entered the lake, according to the model that I created, entered the lake during those 11 days.
Oh.
I mean, when these results came through, for me, this was mind-blowing that this one event could actually contribute this much sediment to the lake. And then looking at the amount of total phosphorus moving into the lake, almost 70% of the phosphorus that entered the lake entered the lake during these 11 days. So then my modeling brain kicked in and I said, well, that's a lot. So what does this mean for the lake? And again, a reminder that we have a mesotrophic lake. That means that we're like teetering on the edge between being like a little bit green and a lot of green in any given year. And it literally depends on the weather as to what type of water we're going to observe in the lake. So I made the assumption that the lake would be stratified at about 15 feet, which is in midsummer when this occurred, that's about where we have the water that's continually mixing on the surface, goes to about 15 feet deep in the lake, and then water that's isolated on the bottom, I didn't include in the analysis. So if we make the assumption based on a really old DNR map, just to get an idea for a baseline, over the course of the entire monitoring season, we would have seen about 2.5 micrograms per liter of phosphorus accumulate in the lake over the year. Which really, again, when we're sitting at a tipping point, that might make a big difference in terms of what we would expect to see in water clarity. Just in those 11 days, about half of the total amount of increase would have occurred from phosphorus loading in the lake. So these are real numbers. If you want to go back and look at the lake monitoring data that is available on our website and the DNR website, it might be an interesting mental exercise to go back and add 1.2 to all of the phosphorus numbers and then recalculate the trophic state and what the expectations might be for the lake. But this, doesn't seem like a big number, but over 11 days, very important to the ecology of the lake. So I think I went over most of these conclusions through the course of the presentation. You're welcome to revisit these. These are just copied out of the report. The bolded point that I added, the big take-home conclusion from what we found is to focus on slowing down the water flow to maintain the integrity of the stream bottom and the stream banks, which is where a significant proportion of the sediments and nutrients are probably coming from, and try to utilize areas where we do actually have access to a floodplain to try to sort of copy what's happening at the site right down here by County A, where we can get water up into the landscape. And luckily for us in the preserve, we have lots of space potentially to allow that water to go. So this is just a list of the conclusions that we came through. Again, I added the same comment to this one: divert water into the floodplain. I really do want to emphasize what allows us to make these conclusions and allow us to understand what's happening in the watershed and the creek and in the lake from year to year is to keep going in terms of monitoring water quality, collect water depths, using our HOBO sensors or water depth sensors out in the watershed so that we can understand the amount of water and phosphorus and suspended solids that are moving into the lake. At this point, the hard work is done in terms of maintaining the project. The sites are all installed and well established. We've had really solid ratings curves, which is that mathematical relationship between depth and flow from year to year. This will allow us to understand whether or not we have a directional change. And in the context of the larger projects that are starting to occur, it's going to be really, really important for us to understand how much water is actually moving through the system at different points. Kind of piggybacking on that, that effort was continued in 2024. I have the first few bullet points, or 2 bullet points, are the things that will allow us to maintain these models in the future and utilize the equipment that we have in place. We did continue macroinvertebrate monitoring, looking for some directional changes in those in-stream macroinvertebrate communities. Other things I helped with this year, citizen lake monitoring and some zebra mussel monitoring. So I did, it's kind of interesting. I put a picture up there because I've used these to sample macroinvertebrates in streams before, but I've never actually used them to look at zebra mussel colonization. So this project is trying to assist in understanding like how big of a problem are zebra mussels in the lake. So I think there were 3 or 4 spots around the lake. We got permission from landowners. I went out on their piers and did my best while I was laying down, tying these under their piers not to lose my glasses or fall in. And then I didn't get to see how these turned out, so I don't know what the results were from this study. But we are working to understand how zebra mussels might colonize structures in the lake and how they might affect lake ecology. Then I just wanted to touch on what the plans are for the coming year. I'm really interested to update the water budget model and the loading models to see how they compare not only to 2023, but what's it like when we have 2 relatively dry years. So now we can look at and see, hey, like what happens, is low water a consistent state that we can count on? Or is there some variability in terms of what we can expect in terms of phosphorus and sediment loading under low conditions? So the nuts and bolts of the things that I have to do and why I'm not talking about 2024 today, this is a big job when you're talking about 15,000 data points. So I'm going to be adding all of our water quality data and our water depth data to the existing databases that we have, look for some trends, create those mathematical relationships that we need to conduct flow modeling. Once the flow modeling is complete, then I can use a different series of mathematical equations and relationships between what's happening between flow and phosphorus and suspended solids to create the models for the nutrient and the solids loading. You'll be receiving a summary report, and the way that I've constructed the reports, and I'm hoping that this is a benefit for the board who has to ultimately make decisions and compare things from year to year, is I designed the templates for the report in such a way that the years are just going to stack now. So probably 80% of the report will look just like the one from last year, and what we'll be noting in there is new information, new comparisons, and hopefully reports that things are getting better. If not, then things we might want to be concerned about, or if things are staying the same. To continue to have this information, we do need to maintain the water depth monitors and the watershed, and continue with roughly along that monthly, bi-monthly, monthly sample collection, so that scientifically we can validate comparing 2022, 2023, 24, 25. Because if we start changing what we're doing, more information or less information relative to the other years, there might be differences in how we collected data that will wash out the differences that are really happening out in the watershed. I understand there's a lot of new projects that are starting up this year, some exciting work happening potentially in the stream and in the watershed that I am excited to assist with in 2025. Yes?
Just out of curiosity, because 2024 was an unusually wet and then dry, do you think that that's going to have any impact on any of your numbers?
We haven't had an initial like really wet spring season yet that I've modeled, so that's a good question that we'll know somewhere in July approximately the answer to that one. But I don't know. I don't know if it would have, I think it might have impacts potentially to the lake more so than what we would expect to find in the creek, just because You do get an accumulation over the winter of like, stuff accumulates under the snow and then stuff accumulates on the snow and then there's that big melt on top of large rain events. You can see, if we had a more urbanized watershed, you would definitely see more things, probably like chlorides rushing into the stream, but I don't know if that's a big concern here. That's a good question. I'm not sure on how to expect what the timing would happen. So the budget might look a little different, and it wouldn't look different in terms of the numbers that we would generate at the end, but the graphs would look different in terms of when the loading occurred. And then that would be something interesting for us to try to understand how that affected the trajectory of the lake. Because in my past experience as a lake manager, what I found in general is that wet springs are really, really bad. Because they have that early infusion of nutrients and it tends to get the algae started faster than you would expect, even though the temperatures are cool. They have so many resources to just reproduce and grow that it kind of sets the stage for more of a green water year.
Because we had one stretch in there this spring where we had about 13 inches of rain over
Yeah.
about that 2-week period. So.
Yeah.
I have a question, Dwight. So how much of this data, or all of this data, will it be able to be used in the new projects coming up with the group that we've hired, the engineering group? Are they going to be able to use this analysis and this data?
Well,
All of it, hopefully?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why we're collecting it.
Right.
So if we change something, we have a 3 to 4 year baseline to compare how much water is moving through the watershed at different times. So what we'd be hoping to see if we have something happening in the preserve is that water levels would not spike as heavily at the Highway A site and then downstream at Ripley Road. I mean, right now, one of our biggest friends in the watershed is that undersized culvert at Ripley Road. I mean, it's thankfully during those big events, I mean, the water just stops there and it backs up into the wetlands. Takes longer to move through the watershed. And a lot of that, I don't capture that at the Ripley Road site because I'm downstream of the culvert, but I know what's happening because of what we observe at Highway A.
Right.
But to see essentially no increase in water volume from A to Ripley Road probably is a good thing. It would indicate that the watershed or the wetlands around the Highway A site are doing what we intend them to do.
Right. And that analysis that you mentioned about the backing up of the water from the culvert will be part of the model I hope they use when they look at the fixes. What are the fixes that we can do, and where upstream can they restrict that flow from coming through so fast?
Yeah,
And if it's a natural beaver dam or whatever those things are that can help.
Yeah, those would be things that we would replicate to try to utilize the land in the preserve to do the same thing that's happening downstream.
Yeah, good points. Okay. Any other questions for Dwight? John, you have something?
Yeah. In the past, I saw the data where they monitored the suspended solids going into Lake Ripley on the upstream side and the amount going out. And there was a calculation done that estimated like 20 tons of sediment entering the lake and then not exiting the lake per year. Is that something that you're looking
The
at?
actual number's way higher, and
Oh.
that holds true. I don't have data for this summer from the outlets because of the culvert installation. So literally, the end of I don't know what you call the metal thing at the exit of the culvert, but you know what I'm talking about? Like where it comes out, there's like a metal sheet.
Yep.
It was almost touching our depth monitor there. So just for the sake of not knowing what was going to happen to that $1,000 piece of equipment that was on the bottom of the creek, I just took it out.
Okay.
And the other thing that happens is when you change the stream, the relationship between depth and flow changes, and there was a huge change in the shape of the stream there. So all of the data that I collected up until that installation wouldn't have been able to be used with data that I collected afterwards, and it literally chopped the monitoring season in half. So we didn't have enough samples for before, and we weren't going to have enough samples after to make use of it. So to economize my use of time and the district paying me to do my job, it just seemed like the most feasible alternative was just to pull it and make sure that we could reinstall it this year and then restart that.
Yeah, the Park Road culvert.
Yeah, the Park Road
Yeah,
culvert.
so that's where your analysis happened to determine How much
outlet.
sediment is going into the lake?
Is going out.
Is going out?
Yeah,
Right.
the Ripley Road essentially is where we determine how much is coming in.
Right. And did you get that, how much was coming in number? I think that's maybe part of the question.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I didn't.
The 20 tons of sediment got my attention. and
Well,
that
here's
was much higher.
here's from 2022. I can show you. I have that available here. So we looked at tons of sediment
Okay.
moving through, and it's about 70 tons moved through Ripley Road.
How many?
70.
And that was a
70?
dry year or a wet year?
That was the big event year in 2022. So, and again, 80%.
But that was a one event, though.
No, the left side is the whole year.
Okay,
June through
okay.
October. For that year, we had data that I was confident in modeling. And then the event only is on the right side. So we had 70 tons move through in the entire year, and 54 move through during that 11-day time period.
54 tons.
Yeah.
That's just, wow.
Well, if you try to kayak where the creek comes into the lake, you'll see where it's going.
Right.
And if you get past the point where that old channel comes into the lake where the campground
Right.
used to be,
Yep.
the sediment is moving out into the lake.
Right.
Like you can see it very clearly there. Like there's a change in the bottom. If you go around the corner, up more towards where Deb's house is,
Yep.
you can see that the bottom changes. It's more, you can see that the sediment has been there for a long time,
Mhm.
whereas you have this really like flocky, loose,
Yeah.
just muck
Yeah,
on the inlet.
yeah, I spent a lot of time there, yeah.
Yeah.
It's really evident.
Mhm.
You know, there's probably just inches of water going through that old channel there.
I can confirm because I kayaked up
Yeah.
that for 2 summers, and there was, if the water levels go down a little bit,
It's not bad.
you're on the bottom and
Yeah,
you're
not
just
bad.
you're cranking through muck.
Yeah.
What-
I'm sorry.
No.
This is really good work.
Yeah,
Thank you.
oh, yeah, thank you so much, Dwight. It's great work. Which is why the district is moving in this direction to spend this money and get these grants to come up with a fix to this, because we've discovered this and it's amazing. I can't believe how much goes through in a strong rain event.
Yeah, and-
70% of the,
Yeah, 70%. And while there might be some variability in the actual amount going in, again, this is a model.
Right.
So I mean, I have a dozen data points collected for flow to model 12,000 data points.
Right.
So I mean, there's some, what's the right way to put it? The relative amounts going through are real. The actual amounts might vary because it's modeling, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
Okay. So what we'd be looking for in the future is to see, the relative amounts modeled from year to year to year going down. And then we can just compare that to our benchmarks of 0.075 and 12 milligrams per liter. And hopefully, as we get closer to reaching those goals, then we would see these numbers consistently going down from year to year.
any other questions for Dwight? Great job, Dwight.
And I did want to say thank you for, I have had a lot of requests for equipment, and I know things that aren't always anticipated in the budget. Maintenance on the equipment, that is handled very, very quickly. Leanna is really like my go-to on that to deal with the vendors. And we have had some problems, equipment fails, but I mean, we've gotten new meters when we needed them. We've gotten new depth sensors, we've had our depth sensors serviced when we've needed them. We even have one we use to monitor lake level in any emergency. We could pull and we can put in the creek to collect the data that we need now. So I'm appreciative of the fact that the things that I asked for that I need to complete this work for you, that it's been a point where I get the stuff in a timely manner and I can continue to the work and maintain the integrity of the project.
Yeah, absolutely. We're here to support you and the mission, so thank you to yourself and Leanna and everyone else who's helped you, so. Yeah, thank you.
Great job, Dwight.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I was gonna.
We didn't have to get up and wander around.
Plugged in.
Okay, we'll pick up where we are here at new business. The first order of new business, let's set our board meeting dates for 2025. Discussion possible action. We currently meet the third Saturday of every month. Our annual meeting is the third Saturday in August. And typically we do not schedule a November meeting because of the holidays, and we have our November meeting moved to December. The first Saturday in December in 2025 is December 6th. So if everyone is okay with setting those dates at this time, we can do that and get it posted. If there is a change that's required, we certainly can discuss that throughout the year.
And I have all the dates listed here if you'd like me to just list them
Sure,
off.
go ahead, you can read them if you wish.
January 18th, February 15th, March 15th, April 19th, May 17th, June 21st, July 19th, August 16th if we decide to do the annual meeting, but I think typically we do that in a separate.
The annual meeting is a separate,
Right, we don't confirm the annual meeting yet, I don't believe,
correct.
right? September 20th, October 18th, December 6th.
Okay,
So wouldn't you still list the August meeting even if it's not the annual meeting? Because there's a meeting and then there's the,
no, the August
Okay.
meeting is the annual meeting. We do
Okay.
not have a,
I always thought,
Board
well, it's the
meeting.
budget meeting that comes before.
yeah, we
Okay.
do not have a board meeting in August. We have the
Okay.
annual meeting, which is the third Saturday in August.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
usually, yeah, okay.
Okay, any other questions on meeting dates for 2025? I entertain a motion to approve the meeting dates as read. Georgia, you'd like to make the motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Or a second? Any other discussion on the meeting dates for the 2025 calendar year? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays? All right, thank you. Okay, we'll go into Wisconsin Lakes Association. These are our memberships that we purchase throughout the year, and we need approval for each one, so I'll just read them.
And I just want to mention one quick thing. Wisconsin Wetlands Association, I have $50, but it's actually $75.
Okay,
So that was.
let's go through them one at a time. So we have the Wisconsin Lakes Association for $100.
And I just want to, as you go through them, I'll just say what they give to me and why they're important and why I think that we should continue our membership with them. Wisconsin Lakes, I have a lot of one-on-one phone calls for things like, well, the artificial wake enhancement was huge. Mike Engelson helped me throughout that, so that was helpful. They build campaigns to pass legislation that supports lake districts. So some of the bylaw changes, they had actually helped lobby for those changes and like the $5,000 to $10,000, that kind of stuff. So they're really helpful in legislation, lobbying, and one-on-one conversations that help me progress, resolutions or ordinances or stuff, things like that.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the Wisconsin Lakes Association fee for the year of $100.
So moved.
Laura, is there a second? George, a second. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Move on to Rock River Coalition, $50.
This one, discounts on educational seminars. They have a newsletter that includes some of our stuff. It's really great partnership building. I work with them monthly, I would say. Purple Loose Drive, Koshkonong Trail students. I could list a bunch of projects that I work with them on. I also want to mention for this, if we want to add 3% to the total to help cover the payment processing fees, it's $150 for payment processing fees. Debbie and I chatted about this last year, so if we wanted to approve that one for $51.50, that might be better for accounting reasons for Debbie. Debbie, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I was looking at what we budgeted and what the total cost of all of them would be.
Oh, yeah.
And no, so that's what I was going to.
Okay.
Dues and membership, it says we budgeted 2024, 525, and where are we now? I don't think we're, so that's
I
all
think
I
we'll
was
be-
trying to see where 315 we're at. Because some of these went on the credit card and we didn't actually pay for until this year.
Oh, sure.
So like some of this would be paid this year, but some of it would be deferred until next year because it's always, the credit card's a month late.
Okay.
So it still seems like we have plenty.
Yeah, it looks like $391.50 is what I'm totaling
Yeah.
right now.
Okay. So then I'll move to approve the Rock River Coalition membership for $51.50. Is there a second?
I'll second.
George, a second it.
I
Any
need to
other?
abstain. I need to abstain.
You need to abstain? Okay.
I'm on the board of the Rock River
Okay.
Coalition.
Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and there's one abstain. Any nays? Okay, motion passes. Moving on to North American Lake Management Society for $165.
These guys have a really great newsletter that comes out with a lot of updated things on items that the district lobbies for, so it helps me keep up to date on kind of what's going on countrywide. Also, they have really great workshops and seminars and online conferences that I gain a lot from. So this one is important to me.
Okay. I'll move to make the motion on the North American Lake Management Society for $165. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Debbie seconded. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Wisconsin Wetlands Association for $75.
Again, they give a newsletter out. There's discounted registrations for events and workshops. There's access to field trips, and I took 2 of those field trips actually this year. So those, I really like this organization.
Okay. I'll move to approve the Wisconsin Wetlands Association for $75. Is there a second?
Second.
Laura seconded. Any other discussion on the motion?
This is the new one, right?
Wisconsin Wetlands?
Yes.
Yes, thank
That's the
you.
one you asked for, because that's why we budgeted the 600 instead of,
Exactly.
okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? Okay, motion passes. Thank you, guys. That should be all of them, right? Is
Yep.
there anything else?
Nope.
Okay. And we do this every year. We approve our memberships every year, and there's the one additional, right?
This year, yeah.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other old business?
Not for
Any
me.
announcements?
Not for me.
Okay. I will entertain a motion to
So
adjourn.
moved. Meg, so moved.
Meg, is there a second?
Second.
Doug, seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody. Great meeting. Thank you, Dwight. Dwight slept. Great
10:22.
presentation.